Warning. Critique Revolve contains adult language and discussions. If you're easily offended, do not continue to listen.
Welcome, everyone, to Critique Revolve on Rain Man Digital. I am your stand-in host tonight, Thomas Cowley, and joined with me for the first time that we've ever done a movie review together, just the two of us, Michael Flores.
Hello!
Now, we've previously did Man of Steel with Brian, but that was years ago.
Wait, has this really been the first time?
This is the first time that it's just you and me.
Like an official movie
An official movie review, you and me. Not just us, derailing whatever show we're talking about.
Right.
With movie facts.
Interesting.
This week, guys, we are talking about the very special re-release of Terminator 2 Judgment Day, 25 years after its original debut in 1991, which has made Mike feel very old.
It really did.
And it made me feel non-existent because I'm only 26.
So you were two. Did you see it? Did you see it on opening night?
I didn't. I might have. I don't remember. It's a bit foggy at that time, my memory as a whole.
You would have the worst parents in America if
they took me to this.
Yeah, they took you to go see T2.
Dude, they were so sheltering helicopter parents. It explains a lot about my life.
Listen, they're not sheltering you too badly if they didn't take you to the screening of Terminator. I think that's true. I think that's good parenting.
Sheltering, good parenting, whatever.
I mean, especially after re-seeing this, and it's been years since I've seen Terminator 1 and 2.
Outside of TV, maybe.
Yeah, and it's still a bit disturbing at times.
It's still got some good, gross out scenes.
Yeah, for sure.
In particular for this one.
Yeah.
Which we're going to discuss a little bit about the story in this, but mostly, guys, we're here to talk about the new stereoscopic 3D presentation of this. They have converted Terminator to 3D.
Yeah.
Now, this is kind of a hit or miss subject for a lot of people, especially myself. Anybody who's listened to me, whether it was Play It or Slay It or Critique Revolve or even Supernatural and Rain Man at this point, I always talk about how I'm not a huge 3D fan. I prefer to see it in 2D.
Yeah.
Mike, do you prefer 2D?
I prefer 2D as well.
I think that's just kind of the film douchebags that we are, where we're like, it's tainted if it's not original.
Most film buffs are like that, and that does sound very douchey, but it's not just the fact that I want to see the standard cinema 2D screening of my movies, but at the same time, I feel like a lot of 3D is a big gimmick. It's a big work to get that extra dollar.
There's exact science behind that, proving that there is money-grabbing attempts involved with 3D. Now, it's kind of fitting that 3D came about thanks to James Cameron, that resurgence with Avatar in 2010.
Yeah.
And,
Thank you, James Cameron.
Thanks, I guess. I mean, he did a ton of other stuff, including Terminator 1 and 2, so you got to take the good with the bad.
Right.
Now, way back when Avatar first hit theaters, 3D had two different modes about going about it. One of which was the actual native 3D, which involves two different cameras at the same time, an entire different rig setup. It's a lot harder to focus. It's a lot harder to do everything because you're essentially using two cameras to do the job of one.
Right.
So anything that's off kind of ruins the whole shot. And you have to have twice as many people manning everything. Or there was what was very unpopular at the time, 2010, 11, 12, was conversions to 3D in post-production. These are your Clash of the Titans. This is your Thor and Thor 2, The Dark World. These are the ones that people saw after the fact that looked very weird. The biggest difference for the layman, I would say, native 3D had depth. There was something in the foreground, there was something in the background. That tree in the distance is way in the fucking distance.
It's because the entire shot was being designed for a 3D shot. It's no different than if you were planning a visual effects shot and you wrote it out in the script, you planned it out with the visual effects guys, you say, hey, a green screen or chroma key is going to be behind the actor here. The shot usually looks better than when you go back in post and start fixing shit. because it wasn't planned. And that's kind of the case that you saw with a lot of these 3D movies, was it was done after the fact because James Cameron, being the god that he is in terms of movie gimmicks, the guy is a genius of sorts. He's not everyone's favorite go-to filmmaker, but the guy definitely knows his shit in terms of cinema, the summer blockbuster. The guy
absolutely
is I think hand in hand with names like Steven Spielberg, George Lucas, Martin Scorsese. These are gentlemen that, all grew up in around the same time. They came up at the same time in
the 70s.
Yeah. So James Cameron definitely knows what he's doing. So when he did revolutionized 3D in Avatar, he shot that whole thing to look beautiful. And that's why when you go see that screening for Avatar, it was amazing. And that's why so many people got swept up in the entire hoopla of 3D. And that's why people were willingly throwing money at the box office saying, I'm going to go see this again. I'm going to go see this again. And
when you say that, though, the whole idea of seeing it again, that really was, for me, the first time in a very long time that people went to the theater multiple times for one movie.
Right.
In the 70s, people did that for Star Wars. They did that for Indiana Jones. They did that to see it again because of the experience. And I was in college, in film school, when Avatar hit. So I was surrounded by people just blowing this thing for its technical prowess. But that was the first time that even, people I met at work and I knew going amongst the streets and my friends, they were so into it that they went to see it again. And this wasn't cheap. I mean, not like it's fucking cheep now, but
it wasn't cheap
3D
then either.
Wasn't cheap then either.
Yeah. And see, that's where the problem lies with this whole 3D resurgence, thanks to Avatar. James Cameron was doing it as a way to push the boundaries of filmmaking and give a reason for audiences to come to the theater, because as we know, piracy has completely devastated the box office. Most people don't go see movies unless you have gimmicks like this, and that was kind of the point. It was to give a true experience to audiences, because as we know, people's televisions are getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and their sound systems rival what you have at the theaters.
And you can pause it at any time and go to the bathroom,
or have sex if you so want to. I mean,
save money if it sucks.
Yeah, exactly. So that is why they started doing this, was to combat that. Like, well, let's give people reasons to come to the theater again. And that's why 3D became that craze. And because of that, because so many producers and studios saw the amount of money that Avatar was making and the repeat business, that is why, because Hollywood knows how to rate people, that is why 3D kind of left a bad taste in a lot of people's mouth shortly after Avatar, because every movie decided to go and redo their movies in 3D. And you mentioned Clash of the Titans, what is infamous for that. The Last Airbender and Thor are the other two. And they're known for their schlocky, thrown together 3D that looked horrendous, looked terrible, but the studios didn't care. They're saying, look at Avatar, guys. It made tons of money. Let's turn everything 3D.
And I remember watching Avatar, being amazed by the depth and the colors.
It was amazing looking.
And the view. And you really felt, because you were in the theater, you really felt like you were on that planet Pandora. It was immersive. And then I remember going to see Thor: The Dark World, which was converted to 3D, and I was like, what the fucking hell happened? My eyeballs are trying to vomit inside my head.
Yeah.
Because it was off. It was like looking at the old 3D with the red and blue filter glasses where the picture's just a little blurred on top of each other.
Yeah.
And that's the most it had.
It wasn't good. And even before, James Cameron kind of revolutionized it and showed movie producers that they can make regular movies without drawing attention to the 3D.
Right.
Use the 3D, the stereoscopic cameras, use them in a way that helps accentuate the story and bring the story more to the audience so that they can connect and feel like they're in the moment. Whereas back in the day, even I would say 2004, 2005 and before, dating way back, the 3D era was around. It was coming back before James Cameron, but James Cameron is what showed people they can do it right.
You don't need you still need stupid glasses, but not colored glasses.
But you had those dumb shots for no reason, where you would point at the screen and they'd have the
funny
spear.
That you bring that up.
They would have the spear throwing, and it would just conveniently.
Whoa, it's coming at me.
Yeah, it was very in your face. Hey guys, this is a new toy we have, and we're gonna play with it a lot for no reason.
I think right there, something you said is a great distinction between James Cameron, who is a filmmaker who wanted to push the boundaries of what he could do in the cinema, versus a hack director who goes for something that is obviously to take advantage of the 3D effect.
Right.
Comparison, Mark Webb, Spider-Man, The Amazing Spider-Man 2. One of the most painful experiences of my life in the movie theater, not just because of the horrible writing, but because of the 3D. And it had multiple times where something would come at the screen and reach out at you. And I remember when I saw his previous one, The Amazing Spider-Man, it shoots web at the screen is like the last thing he does.
Yeah.
But because I saw it in 2D, I didn't know what the fuck he was doing. He was just staring at me until the web kind of like pathetically jizzed out of his wrist to the side. And I'm like, oh, it was a 3D attempt.
Yeah.
And you're a hack because you don't even know what you're doing.
Your movie has to hold up. If people watch it in 2D, they need to get the same experience, meaning don't do these terrible shots that you wonder why they did it when you're watching the 2D. And that's something, again, that James Cameron did with Avatar, is that you could sit back and enjoy the movie for what it is in a 2D format as well. Now, I'm not saying the movie is as rewatchable. In fact, I feel like if I were to put it on Blu-ray right now, I can do two shits. I can give two shits about Avatar. I don't think it's that cutting edge of a story or a movie.
It's Pocahontas and Fern Gully.
Yeah.
It really is. It's been done before. But it was how it looked in the movie theater.
Yes, it was the theatrical exhibition that made that movie memorable for so many people. Because if you were to tell someone, hey, that's never seen Avatar, you're like, hey, Avatar is awesome, you have to watch it, and you put it in your Blu-ray player, chances are they're just going to shrug. They're just going to be like, I guess this is okay.
Looks good.
Yeah.
I don't get what the big deal is.
Yeah, and and you're going to see that this is 3D is a gimmick that's managed to work for the most part. There has been, the movie industry is guilty of various gimmicks throughout just the last 10 years alone that they attempt to try to bring audiences back into the theater and to fight off piracy. Another infamous one that I'm glad did not stick and it didn't work, and that's the terrible 48 frames a second.
Yeah.
And that was done on The Hobbit, Peter Jackson's latest installment of the, it's part of the Lord of the Rings, not trilogy, Lord of the Rings franchise.
It's a vestigial growth onto the Lord of the Rings series.
That's the best way to say it.
For me, anybody who is a fan of Star Wars but despises everything about the prequels, which frankly I disagree with you, but that mentality is The Hobbit to my Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
It is a CGI mess that just craps on what I originally loved. And I was going to say, it's not just hack directors that tried something specific with 3D, because The Hobbit, all three of those movies were in 3D. And like you said, Jackson tried to do something different with 48 frames, but it looks terrible. It looked terrible when it came out. People talked about that when those movies hit theaters.
And that was his...
It looks bad today.
Yeah.
And a few years later,
I know.
The Lord of the Rings still looks amazing, and it's been 17 years.
Well, when Peter Jackson released his press release announcing what he would be doing with the Hobbit films,
I cried.
Well, I wasn't quite sure what to expect. I know, first off, I think anyone that knows anything about film, it's always 24 frames a second. That's the go-to frame rate. That's what makes things look like a movie. Period.
That cinema look.
So when he released that statement saying he's going 48 frames a second, I was like, I don't know what you're trying to do. And his whole purpose was the gimmick. He wanted to do the James Cameron maneuver and say, let's bring people back into a theater for the experience of the 48 frames a second exhibition, hoping that people would gravitate and like it. And the whole idea behind it was to create more popping visuals that looked more realistic and as if they were right there in front of you. And to me,
shockingly,
basically what it looked like was a soap opera. There were scenes that were just outright laughable because the 48 frames a second is so smooth. And so
they have no detail to their face.
Yeah, it's just so smooth, so real to life that it actually looked like I was watching one of those low budget low budget soap
Days of
operas.
Our Lives.
Yeah, and his justification was it's going to make the visual effects pop out more,
Which would have worked had the CGI not been a bag of crap.
I'm willing to bet the CGI wasn't a bag of crap, that it was the 48 frames a second that made it look like shit.
Could have been that too.
He wanted to bring the clarity out, and he brought it out so much you saw all the terrible imperfections.
The Smog the Dragon was the only part of that looked good.
Yeah.
I mean, the last movie itself is a train wreck of horrible visuals, but we're not here to talk about The Hobbit because I'll be just bitching all day.
But all of this is leading to the entire discussion about 3D, a gimmick that has managed, even though we're not the biggest fans, it is a gimmick that has managed to hold on.
You know, it's another gimmick that the theaters tried. This is way back in the day.
Vibrating seats that make you come. Now that would be a keeper.
You got to sit on this device, take your pants off, and sit on this device.
It's like South Park, that thing they ride on. Remember that one episode?
Oh, God, instead of planes. Yeah. You got to suck it and jerk it. And yeah. That's Mike's movie-going experience for you, everybody.
Oh, man.
No, was Smell-O-Vision.
I don't even remember
this
that.
Was way, way back, like the 30s or 40s or 50s. One of those black and white-esque eras still, where before color really just became
I just hate the name. So
where they had cards, like the scratch and fucking sniff cards that you would go into the theater. It died very, very quickly.
Well, obviously.
But that should tell you guys, the movie industry has constantly been looking for some bullshit to bring you back.
Right.
So whether it was Smell-O-Vision failure or 48 frames per second failure or 3D now, there was a lot of attempts. The only good thing I think that has come out of 3D being so prevalent lately, because it's died down a bit, it has,
right?
But it's still around. It's been around for the last 7 or 8 years. Thankfully, it seems to have gotten a little bit better, and that has a lot to do with how they've done it.
I agree. Both the 2D conversion and the actual true, they both have gotten a lot better.
Now, they don't actually do native 3D as much, because as we said earlier, it's a lot more work, and frankly, unless you're James Cameron, most of them don't want to put the time into it.
Or if you're shooting film, you can't.
Exactly.
So like the Star Wars movies, all of them have been redone, 2D conversion, and they look pretty good. They look okay.
Bad.
Yeah.
And the way in which they do that is this painstaking rotoscope tracing of the original 2D image.
Now, Thomas, a good way to explain that to people is exactly the Photoshop. The Photoshop, you know, the classic, I'm going to trace this person out and make a weird, funny meme or make fun of somebody. Mm-hmm. That's basically what rotoscoping is for visual effects. You're tracing someone. Now, imagine the painstaking work it takes when you're just tracing one person out that doesn't move. Now, take millions of frames
24 per second in a 2+ hour movie,
and you have to rotoscope by hand every single movement. Now, people may think, oh, technology, there's something that does it automatically. Nope. Guess what? In this grand, golden age of technology, and the cinema technology has really pushed forward, guess what doesn't exist still, Thomas?
Auto trace.
And
if you try to do, anybody who's used Photoshop or done anything like that, used one of those magic wand tools.
Yeah.
I'll just grab no, you won't. It's going to fuck everything up.
And they do have a version of auto tracking, auto tracing, but you have to watch it like a hawk because
one thing out of place.
And it does happen, because I've used auto tracing for rotoscoping, and you might as well just sit there and do it by hand, but it constantly pops out.
There's always a bubble.
Yeah.
There's always something that didn't get caught or something that was dragged in that shouldn't have been. And again, it's 24 frames per second. Do you really want to painstakingly watch each one a million times?
Yeah.
Or just do it right the first time?
So it's a process, man, for sure.
But thanks to that process and so many artists being involved in this Terminator re-release, with James Cameron actually being a part of it, which kind of surprised me that he was involved in any way, because I would have thought he wouldn't want to be a part of it. But then again, he is the guy who kind of grandfathered 3D back into the mainstream.
He's a bit of an arrogant individual, and I guess rightfully so. Because
he's earned it, I think, compared to a lot of other people who try to be arrogant dicks in Hollywood.
Right.
I mean, we know famously directors who throw their shit around and then don't work again.
Yeah.
Fantastic Four, anybody.
Oh. So, I mean, it does make sense that James Cameron came back, just because of the fact that, A, it's his baby, it is his pride and joy, and he's kind of seen it, the Terminator franchise, completely kind of go downhill. And I think not only was he trying to, not only was he trying to celebrate this 25th anniversary, but there's also a motive behind it. There was a recent announcement that he is coming back to the Terminator franchise to do some type of soft reboot or reset to where he's going to do
the phrase is do it justice.
He's going to Highlander to this bitch, meaning he's going to go back and pretend it never existed.
There can only be one director.
I'm assuming that's what he's going to do, because everyone who knows the Highlander movies knows that they pretend the second one doesn't exist because it completely changed everything. It changed the mythology. It changed the explanation behind the immortal warriors. And I think, based on what we've been getting from news, it looks like James Cameron is going to do some type of time travel technique to where the other ones never happened.
He's going to etch-a-sketch it out of time.
Yeah.
Now, Mike, are you a Terminator fan? Would you call yourself a Terminator fan?
I am a Terminator enthusiast. Let's say it like that. Because
what the hell does that even mean?
Well, because I'm not like a Terminator fan. I don't get like all giddy and excited.
You're not an Arnold fan, or
I am an Arnold fan, but I'm not a Terminator fan. Like, I do love Terminator. I actually enjoy even the shitty ones. I like them for what they are. But I'm not a hardcore, like, I have posters on the wall and little action figures of Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Well, that's a zealot or fanatic.
Okay, well then I guess I've graduated from enthusiast to fan then.
Okay.
Yeah.
I think I probably would stay with enthusiast. I like the first two.
Why did you upsell me and then you go exactly to where I was at, enthusiast?
No, because you already broke. I wanted you to be the douche, and I'll just follow in your
you're
wake.
Such a douche. You totally tricked me.
Because I like the first two that Cameron did, and I like what Salvation could have been. But I don't like 3. I really don't care for Salvation that much, and I don't care for Genesis.
The thing about Salvation, Thomas, is I think as a standalone movie, it was entertaining and enjoyable to watch. However, it veered so drastically from what Terminator is, it didn't feel right. It didn't even feel really like we were watching a Terminator film, and I think that was the problem with Salvation. Terminator 3. I mean, you and I have
forgettable.
I think we said that at the theater. Terminator 3 was not a horrible movie, but it wasn't really there wasn't anything to write home about. It was meh. And then the last one, Genesis, I mean, do you want to go first on that one real fast?
It just doesn't click for me. It feels like they're just attempting to capitalize on Judgment Day with Judgment Day's ideas and say, pay us again. Yeah. Like, it just doesn't work. It's too late to try to do the exact same thing you did, and you kind of just crap on everything that came beforehand in an attempt for a reboot. And for me, it just screams a cash grab. It really does.
It's like reboot. What they did was it's like rebooting Star Trek, the original series, and pretending Captain Kirk never existed or his importance to the world didn't matter, and you put another captain in that Enterprise seat next to Spock.
Yeah.
Because that's what they did with Genesis. They did something that pissed off almost every Terminator fan and took away the very core and foundation of Terminator, which was John Connor's importance, and they put the focus on Sarah Connor.
And it doesn't even make sense with the previous movies in any way.
No. It was poor. And I
honestly, my favorite is the first one, because I love the stalking monster that will never leave her alone, the horror element to that entire movie, and the shot of the cyborg completely in robot form coming out of the fiery wreckage. That's just amazing to me. Now, Terminator 2 has a lot of strong qualities, but just for whatever reason, the first one's always stuck with me more.
Wouldn't you say that the first two movies, they definitely dip their toes into the sci-fi horror?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I think Cameron's a big fan of that, as we see with Aliens. He does that before. Even Avatar, it's not horror-esque, but he likes sci-fi. The guy does. He likes gadgets. He likes technology. There's no reason he shouldn't bring that to light in his movies.
Yeah.
And both movies do have some scenes that remind you of body horror of The Thing. You know, one of those
there
movies.
are some damn horrific scenes in T2 that I forgot.
Really are.
I forgot existed that were damn disturbing.
Yeah.
And in a way that I think, you know, modern films fail to even accomplish to this day in terms of the true disturbing moments.
And that too kind of comes from a misunderstanding of the technology at hand.
Yeah.
Because while I think we both enjoyed the first two movies, we're not really big fans of anything after Cameron left the series. But with this one, there is two scenes in particular that we're just going to jump right into. One, the death of the T-1000, when it is half blown up, half shrieking in agony as it falls into the steel.
He fell into an ass?
He fell into an ass. Yes, it was a massive ass.
He fell into an ass.
That's the porno version. Sorry, I get them mixed up sometimes. The shrieking monster element and how he's all distorted and twisted, but he's still human-esque, reminded me immediately of The Thing.
Yeah.
The screaming horror, the almost human-like but not quite qualities, as well as the horror flashback, dream sequence prediction that Sarah has about the midway point disgusting. Of the movie. That's fucking dark.
It gives you a very unsettling feeling.
And that's the thing, is it's very clearly not a real person, not CGI. It's a prosthetic person. If you've seen Poltergeist or the first Terminator, you know exactly what I'm talking about. That like fake claymation look to the people.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, it is so much creepier.
It adds a disturbing quality to it.
Because it really does feel like that, because you get the vibe that flesh is melting off, that person that was there, because you're in the movie moment, is dying. And they look inhuman and it looks terrifying. CGI examples of that just don't hit the mark.
No. And this is those two moments you brought up. Both moments I felt worked well with the 3D, the stereoscopic conversion. I felt like it worked really well with it, because those two scenes specifically, the death of T-1000 and the Armageddon scene that has become infamous. I would say famous. It's a viral
especially
thing.
In Arizona.
Yeah, oh yeah, you always see people posting that when it starts getting to 100 degrees here in Arizona. And those two moments, there needed to be a very steady hand and someone who understood completely the conversion process, because when you have two iconic scenes like that and you're trying to convert it over to 3D, it needs to make sure.
If you do it wrong, everyone will know.
Right. And if you're going to do it, you need to make sure you add to it. And when the mangled mess of the T-1000 was blown up and right before he fell into the fire, you saw every element as he was turning in pain. You saw his little, whatever you want to call it, his appendages
twisted
just
and
twisting, coming at the screen. And then when he falls into the fire, you see the fire and the flames engulfing him and it's coming towards the screen. It was a really damn good conversion scene. And that alone, for that scene, the Armageddon scene, and then the intro.
The intro is probably the most obvious point of the 3D.
Wasn't it beautiful?
But I was going to say, but not in a bad way. It's just I felt there was depth to the picture at that point.
It was amazing. When you start that classic Terminator 2 intro in the future,
crushing the skull and turning towards the camera,
and you see all the T-100s walking and crushing skulls. That 3D conversion, that's where most of the effort went in that scene. I mean, it was amazing when you are panning and you're panning from the left side of the screen into the first part of the car that's imploded or exploded, the old remnants of old vehicles, and you hold on that one shot for, I don't know, it was like 2 or 3 seconds, and the car looks like it's right on your eyes. It's a great conversion process. I think ultimately I felt like those 3 scenes make it worth seeing the 3D version. And obviously the entire film is converted.
They stand out a lot more than a lot of the other parts of the movie, which is kind of a good thing because some of it does kind of fade into the background. Not that it's not noticeable, but you adjust to it pretty easily. Because I remember to this day, Amazing Spider-Man 2 and Thor: The Dark World never adjusted watching them was almost painful because of the bad conversion technique.
When you have a bad conversion, it is literally like someone reminding you, hey guys, did you guys notice this is 3D? Hey, did you notice this is 3D? Check this part out, guys.
You paid more money for this.
This is 3D. Check this part out.
You paid extra for this experience right here. Yeah,
you see his cape as flying at you guys purposely, and even though capes don't do that ever, hey guys, that's 3D.
It's like watching it with your eyes slightly crossed. That's the best way to describe those movies at that time.
And you know what? Maybe that's another reason why we really like this conversion process. Maybe because the movie...
It was very seamless.
It's subtle as well. It's subtle, and I think because the conversion process is subtle and only used sparingly for the scenes that mattered, specifically the action scenes, explosions. There were particle scenes as well, fire, flames, smoke. A
lot of the practical effects, they went painstaking and took every moment to get the flames right, which I can't even imagine that.
Yeah.
Because that's not CGI fire that you can control.
No.
Not most of it.
I'm wondering if I haven't seen anything, and I've done some research on this film before we went to go see it, and I don't think they did anything different to the movie, meaning it's not redone. It's not George Lucas. The only thing they did to this was obviously clean up the grain for 4K high def resolution. Yeah. But from what I've read, the only thing they've really done to change it was the conversion to stereoscopic.
Which I think is smart. If you want to celebrate something's 25th anniversary and everyone remembers and knows what they love, to change it so drastically would be a mistake.
Exactly, especially with a movie like this that holds up so well. And I don't think there's other movies that you could have done this with around the same time period. Yes, there are a lot of great blockbuster movies from the early 90s and late 90s, but James Cameron is a special effects guru.
And it's never more prevalent or evident than it is in this movie. I really think this is one of his best examples of his talent. Because this is not an Avatar that a couple years later, or if you're not watching it in theaters, doesn't really hold up to what the hype was when it was in theaters.
No.
This is not, 1984 original Terminator where, it's still great in its own way, but there are a few bits that are kind of dated.
It was an odd time for visual effects unless it's like taking place in space where you can hide it more. When you're dealing with reality, you have that whole, what's that word for? Uncanny Valley effect.
The Uncanny Valley effect, yeah. And that doesn't really come into play here. There are scenes that are very obvious, like, okay, when the T-1000 is in liquid form, obviously,
I love it.
It's not, quote, as smooth or as good looking now, but I honestly argue it looks better in this style.
I would take it. I would take it before a lot of the modern visual effects, because this is something you and I, as we're walking out of the theater, talking about is that not only was this was the perfect movie to convert. Yeah, it was a perfect movie to convert over to because it holds up in almost every single way. And this started a conversation amongst two film douches where we just started talking about how it's amazing that a movie like this from 1991 can be converted to 3D. Any other additional touch-ups.
Ads.
Yeah, no additional touch-ups. And they put it on the big screen, and you're watching it, and it's gorgeous looking, and the stereoscopic is great. And we started talking about modern movies and how the younger generation, the people who are 20-some years old, who love movies and who are avid about going to see them at the theater, they're not going to have the same experience with the movies they grew up with, because movies from 2003, 2004, 2007, and I would even say 2015, 2017.
Yeah, I would too.
They are not going to hold up like these old movies, because real looks real forever. And the fact that they're using practical effects, real effects, that's the reason why these things hold up. And nowadays, everything is CGI'd. Mm-hmm. Everything, for the most part, is really overdone.
Way too much.
And you got to remember, this is technology. Technology is outdated an hour after you came up with it. It really is.
You didn't even finish making it. Just the concept alone, now it's old.
It's true, though. And that's why visual effects that we see in movies today look great to us now because we don't know what it's supposed to look like. But in 10 years, they're not going to be able to do these types of things where they re-release, Harry Potter, the first one from
Maybe
2001.
There was a lot of practical in the first two.
They did a good job. I kind of
But
I probably used a bad example.
The last few, I could see your argument very easily.
Yeah.
Or even, for example, let's say they want to re-release the Marvel movies, the cinematic juggernaut that was the Marvel universe. Not all of them are going to hold up.
Yeah, they're not.
They're just not.
They're not. I mean, that's why you can pop in The Thing, and you can pop in you can pop in Terminator 2, and even, the very first Superman film from 1977. That opening scene that takes place on Krypton, if you didn't know Marlon Brando died an old fat man like years ago, you wouldn't really be able to time place it because it looks so gorgeous. And the cinema quality, the way it's shot looks so great. And it still holds up all the way until we're in 1980 and Christopher Reeves is walking around. You're like, and then the fact that it's just old dates it. But that opening scene in Krypton to this day holds up so good, so well.
You know what the thing is, honestly, for me, that makes this movie more enjoyable compared to the modern day or new age viewpoint, the new CGI look to them?
Yeah.
Is the new CGI from, like you said, the mid-2000s to even recent years is very obviously fake. Kind of going back to The Hobbit, or one of the ones that I think of that sticks out the most to me is the remake / sequel / reboot of The Thing, where it's a completely CGI monster and it looks ridiculous. It looks like someone took a sticker printout and placed it onto your screen.
Superimposed.
Like, yeah, be afraid of that.
Yeah.
It's very obvious that nothing's there. Meanwhile, the Terminator 2 Judgment Day, the T-1000, while he is in this liquid form to where he looks odd, it does have that uncanny valley effect where he really is there, but it doesn't look right, but it kind of does. And honestly, to its effect, it makes the entire feel of the T-1000 far more menacing.
Yeah.
Because from a primal, instinctual level, you're like, something is wrong with that.
Yeah.
And watching him half liquid, half human, sprint running down the street of the parking garage for them towards their car creeps me out a little bit.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, oh, fuck, that thing's going to get you. Meanwhile, when I watch these other more modern CGI takes, I'm like, that's fucking just fake. It just looks bad. Because they, like you said, those are examples that will age like milk.
Yep.
Whereas this is a movie that ages like wine. And I know you'll like that reference because you're a wino.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
But that's the difference. Even though it looks a little bit dated, it looks so good. Like the jail scene when he walks through the bars of the mental hospital.
Yeah.
The liquid element to the T-1000 throughout this whole movie. I'm blown away that they pulled it off that well 25 years ago.
And that was another moment that I thought the stereoscopic conversion looked amazing. Those bars were popping out at us. And then he
comes at you a little bit.
It was really cool. I felt like I would love to see his version of Aliens now, 3D.
Ooh. Shit.
I wouldn't mind seeing that, honestly. And again, this is from a guy who's not a 3D buff, but if you can bring back the scares in 3D, I mean, I forgot that because Terminator 3, 4, and 5 were not scary. They weren't horror films.
No.
I forgot that Terminator...
They were action movies.
I forgot that Terminator was a sci-fi horror action flick.
It really was.
And that's why it worked so well. Was
time-traveling, like, alien robot thing that body snatches people.
And that's why 3D works so good for this as well, because James Cameron is going back to the roots of 3D. I mean, 3D started its first round of mainstream appeal was happened in the 50s during the schlocky horror releases of the 50s. So him utilizing the 3D conversion for the very reason why 3D became prevalent in the 50s, I felt worked as well. It made a lot of sense. But going back briefly, Thomas, to your point about things looking good in the past and not looking so good in the
more recent
period. A lot of that has to do with the fact that, and this is something I think I've talked about quite a bit on Weird West Radio, but it comes down to technology being created to do a scene. Meaning, a man like James Cameron, this is what he's known for. He sits down, he writes his script, and he doesn't think whether or not he can do it. He just writes it. And then he writes the shooting script. All right, well, I'm going to do it like this. Well, James Cameron, you're underwater. How the fuck are you going to shoot this when it's all underwater? You said,
don't tell me what to do.
Right. That's what he does. And he creates the technology to get the shot that he wants. He is one of the few filmmakers that actually do that. And that's why his technology dating back to Aliens and T2 looks so well, and why the conversion process of 3D looks so great and so seamless, because he creates technology to make it work and to look right.
To suit his needs.
Whereas when you compare this to things in the 2017 and our time period, current time period, what you're getting now, the reason why you get a lot of CGI that just looks overboard and doesn't necessarily look real, is because they're using technology that's been used for 2 or 3 years. It's been used by this director, this CGI team, this CGI house did this. They're not actually creating anything new. They're just using a same old thing.
It's already been done before, so we don't have to try so hard.
Imagine if a filmmaker was to say, "Hey guys, we're not gonna compose a soundtrack. We're gonna use the soundtrack from Batman Returns, but this is a different movie. This is
The Hobbit.
This is The Hobbit. It's all right. We're just gonna use the same soundtrack, guys." That's basically what a lot of these CGI houses are doing. They're using other people's work that's been mastered from 2 or 3 years ago and then utilizing it on the current movie. I'm not saying all movies do that, but a lot of them do that. And that's why these visual effects are so stale looking.
Well, the bigger thing, I think, to that point that you said, Cameron does what he needs to get what he wants. The other guys use what they have regardless, but they don't become more creative by the limitations. They just reduce their own vision and say, it'll work with this. We can just make it like X. We don't have to try too hard.
Right.
They're not people who push themselves. Okay, we've got a thing of duct tape, a candle, and some string. We're going to make a fucking movie. They're like, we'll just order it. Everyone else has done it. We won't try.
Yeah.
And that's disappointing because Cameron and, like you said earlier, Spielberg, Lucas, Scorsese are these people who thrived on trying to get something brand fucking new. Imagine if Jurassic Park had that mentality. What would you have?
Yeah.
Jurassic World.
You took the words from my mouth. I was about to say that.
Disappointment. Another word for Jurassic World. It's you're not trying. You're just trying to ape someone else's creativity.
And unfortunately, that's the day and age that we're in. And I know we're sounding like old men now at this point, but it's true. If you look at the greats, who are the greats of our time? James Cameron, George Lucas, Steven Spielberg, Martin Scorsese. Where's the new generation? The only other person I would point to and say this is the up and comer, and that's J.J. Abrams. And he's been, dubbed that by James Cameron and Spielberg themselves, saying this guy is the new generation. But what other filmmaker do we have that's the new generation of the big blockbuster movies?
Big blockbuster movies? The only thing I could think of, only because he's had to do so many, would be Joss Whedon, but
I don't know.
I don't know, because he's done Marvel's thing. I don't know what his thing is anymore.
What can... Exactly.
Cabin in the Woods, maybe.
And that was a good movie, though.
It was good.
Yeah.
And Serenity, which I love.
But what does he do for the medium? That's my point.
Exactly.
Like, what does he do? J.J. Abrams does things for the medium. He does things for the medium.
The only other person that I would say they do something for the medium, maybe Tarantino, but I don't even consider him.
He's kind of old generation.
He's kind of old now.
Yeah, I don't consider him new generation anymore.
Maybe Edgar Wright, but Edgar Wright honestly is not somebody who pushes the boundaries of filmmaking as he is somebody who thinks creatively and does his own thing.
Yeah.
He's kind of reminds me in some ways of Tarantino without the homage to the old ways of doing things. He's just a creative person who says, I'm going to do it my way.
Yeah.
I like that, but he doesn't push any envelopes when it comes to how to make a movie. He's more creative and a very good writer.
Yeah. So
do we have anybody? Not really.
No. And
we wonder why everything's getting remade, re-released, remastered, and rebooted. Because there's not a goddamn thing that anybody from today or the last 10 years has done from their own creative energy to make something that'll last the test of time.
Why do you think James Cameron, Martin Scorsese, Spielberg kind of keeps his mouth shut, but Scorsese and James Cameron are very vocal?
About the plights of movies?
All the time. And they always talk about the death of cinema and how there's just really nothing out there anymore that's really pushing the boundaries of anything. There's no technology advancement. There's just nothing new. It's already done. And he says not just the official reboots. It's just the same thing on repeat. No one's really challenging themselves. And then we sit back and wonder why cinema's dead. It's dead because the studios aren't willing to push the boundaries anymore and put directors in those movies that will do that.
I mean, for example, look comparatively to the one we say that might actually count now, J.J. Abrams and Star Wars Episode 7.
Right.
How many people went to see that? Now, admittedly, it's Star Wars, but between that and Avatar, cultural phenomenons that grabbed the public by the shorts and pulled them into the movie theater, you had to go see those. Whether or not you were a fan of the original trilogy, a prequel age fan, somebody who had never seen Star Wars, a kid, everyone went to see those. How many times does that happen anymore?
Yeah, it really doesn't. It really doesn't happen.
Sad.
Yeah. So, I mean, and that's why you're going to keep seeing these gimmicks. Again, getting it back to 3D. I know James Cameron he doesn't do anything without reason. He's a guy that's very busy, that spends most of his life, seriously now, under the sea. I don't know why he's obsessed with the ocean.
I just imagine the crab from Little Mermaid singing the song.
But he really does, man. The guy, like, I read these art. I always keep up on James Cameron's career.
Look at the world. Wouldn't you want to live underwater right now?
The guy is so obsessed with the water. I mean, I made a joke earlier about him shooting a scene underwater, and he's really doing that. The next Avatar movie.
Let's just wait for Avatar 2, where it's this whole underwater exploration.
He actually said in an interview that this is the two things he said. He said that the next Avatar movie will be completely shot underwater. Okay. And
that sounds awesome, though.
It does.
Frankly.
It does. And then the second thing he says that he's hoping to have done, the technology, he's hoping to have it completely done by Avatar 2 is 3D without glasses.
Ooh.
And that's what he wants to do.
I want that.
Yeah. So going back to my first comment about James Cameron in 3D and how he doesn't do anything unless there's a reason for it. Yes, he's celebrating the 25th anniversary of Terminator. Yes, he's getting people ready for him coming back to the Terminator franchise. But also, he's trying to make those waves and get things ready to start promoting. And Terminator is a perfect platform to start pushing his other projects and his other bits of technology that he'll be releasing to theaters soon. Because obviously, if you're going to want to see this movie without 3D glasses, I'm assuming there's going to be a big change up in digital projections and how things are projected. Again, James Cameron pushing the industry forward in order to see his movie. And these are the types of gimmicks that I think will work to keep cinema alive. Unfortunately, these are the things that will, fortunately, these are the things that will be utilized to combat piracy and people's technology within their homes, and how easier it is now to have projectors and big screen TVs.
I think, with Cameron pushing these boundaries, that would be something that keeps me coming to the theater if I was just your average moviegoer, would be those kinds of experiences. The 3D without 3D glasses, the experience.
It's the experience.
From the holodeck Star Trek idea way in the future from now. Those will be things that you'll get up and leave your house to go do.
Right.
Far too often people are lazy these days and just stay home because it's more cost effective. I understand it. But I think him pushing the boundaries for this will be good. And you're right. Doing the Terminator 2 25-year anniversary, showing that the 3D that they've worked on can work, showing that he has the dedication to it, to promote his future projects, which frankly, dude, underwater got me excited just because think of the possibilities with that, with depth and color.
Yeah.
I mean,
I like James Cameron, man. I really do like what he does.
I like what he does.
He's a bit of a douche, but
I'm not talking about his personality. I don't know the man.
And I hate Titanic. I wish
the hate for Titanic.
I don't like Titanic, man. Maybe because it's just overblown, and maybe because people got mad at me for laughing when the guy that was dangling on the bars fell down.
Oh no, I laughed too.
Okay, I was the only one laughing in the theater when everybody was crying. I was the only one that laughed literally out loud, and people looked at me shocked and appalled that I was laughing during a very sad scene. I'm like, well, it was funny. He was holding on for dear life.
Yeah, you're a dickhead. It's just true. But I think with Cameron pushing the boundaries, that'll be good for cinema. I just worry about what'll happen after he stops, frankly.
Yeah.
But, you can always re-release it again in 25 years, right?
Oh,
with
listen,
holodeck technology.
As long as 3D keeps advancing the way it has, and the conversion process looks as
continues to get better,
and it looks as good as T2 looked tonight when we were screening it,
then I'm okay with
I'm okay with it. I think as long as it's subtle and it's used to accentuate or bring attention to a specific scene without distracting, then I say let's keep getting these.
Go for depth. Don't do the Universal Studios Terminator where it comes out into the seat.
Go for depth and some girth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that's what you really want. All right, guys, that's going to do it here for us at Critique Revolve. Thank you for taking the time to listen, whether it was live or on demand. Check out the Facebook page. Go see the new Terminator in 3D, and we will talk to you all later.
Corova Milk Bar sold Milk Plus Velocet, or Synthemesk, or Drencrum, which is what we were drinking. This would sharpen you up and make you ready for a bit of the old ultraviolence.